Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Friday. It is 10 a.m. on the East Coast. And as always, welcome to Behind the Numbers, America's favorite father and son polling show, where we nerd out for a half an hour or so about the polling and the data that's out there shaping the political environment. And Andrew,
yeah, we got a lot this week. It's the war.
Got a lot this week. It's the war.
The war is
shaping it all.
Driving all the polling numbers that you're seeing right now. And it's driving all the policy that's being made. You know, this is the sole focus. And when Americans think about the war, they think about the rising price at the pump. And that is translating into some very, very toxic polling for the president and the party.
Well, let's start out because you said something very important there, because we have a slide about the taco index.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that Deutsche Bank and a Deutsche Bank analyst came up with this metric to determine when Trump would taco on an issue. And it's previously was applied to tariffs. Now they're looking at it for the war. It's a combination of market movement and Trump's approval rating, right?
Yep. Trump's approval rating and the U.S. 10-year U.S. Treasury yields, 20-day change in the S&P 500, and 1 year forward inflation. So it's a bit of a complex measurement, but you can see on Liberation Day, it spiked hugely. And he did taco here and there.
Yep.
There's another spike in the middle of July. I think that one was also to do with tariffs.
Yeah.
And, you know, we got the government shutdown, and then we've got the start of the Iran war. And it spiked hugely. The pressure index spiked higher than it was on Liberation Day, and it started to decline somewhat. But, you know, I still think it's a real possibility that he backs out. Of course, that is going to be catastrophic.
Going to get harder after tonight.
Yeah, of course. And you know, he plans this ground invasion, you know, of course, when markets are closed.
Of course.
He plans all the major moves in Iran when markets are closed. So,
you know, I think that this index is such a useful thing because it really is a telling. It peels back the curtain on his behavioral drivers.
Right.
The other part of it that I love is that it's from Deutsche Bank, which was Trump's lender, guys, for decades, because nobody else would touch his poisonous, crappy brand.
Yeah. And you know, Trump is extraordinarily sensitive to the markets, more so than any president we've ever had.
Oh yeah.
And you know, things are definitely slipping in a significant way. And
sure.
You know, between that and the polling, which is what we've been talking about, and this is Trump's approval. This is approval on military action in Iran.
Right.
Almost uniformly negative, except for farther back there with the Rasmussen polling.
But I just write off Rasmussen from the top anyway. Right. These days. Their thumb is so far on the scale. I don't even acknowledge it.
Right. So the three most recent polls, and even the fourth most recent poll, show pretty widespread disapproval of the military action in Iran. Reuters Ipsos had it at -26. Fox had it at -16, which is pretty bad.
He's pretty upset about that.
Remember, Fox is a good poll, a good outlet for polling.
Actually, folks, just remember, this is a true fact. You may hate Fox, but they have a legitimate public polling operation.
It is.
We've never understood why, but the numbers are very consonant with ours and other people's numbers.
Yeah. And Trump is, of course, furious that Fox News is
mad,
scorching him in this way. But hey, there's really no way around it. You know, if you dig into any of these polls, you can see that the base of support for the war is shrinking where it was already tiny. You know, what's left is the really, really hardcore MAGAs and people who maybe aren't paying as much attention. But it's going to be really hard to avoid this polling collapse on a wider scale when gas prices go up and up and up.
And that trend line has been consistently going vertical.
And still the top issue for most people is inflation. And it's, you know, this is only going to exacerbate the problem.
There's no argument now from any pollster anywhere, even the most MAGA-inflected Rasmussen-style pollster. His numbers on inflation and cost of living are 40 to 45 points underwater.
Worse than Biden here.
Worse
So
than
this is
Biden.
Trump's approval rating on the economy. It's just lower than Biden's lowest rating. And I just want people to remember how bad it was, how bad people thought the economy was during Biden's term. And it's it is talked about in the media, how people are suffering and all that, but the scale is not the same as what we heard during the Biden administration of the inflation crisis. Whereas we're in the same situation now. It's mirrored.
And projected inflation for the quarter is 4.2.
Right.
It was 3.1 when Biden left office. This strikes me as not good for the Trump narrative.
No, it strikes me as very bad for the Trump narrative. And this is having a worldwide effect. And so the last oil shock that we had during COVID was a problem where there wasn't enough demand for oil. Now we have a situation where there's not enough supply, and you can't spend your way out of a supply problem in this case because of the Straits of Hormuz, which is still a major issue. There's not a lever that Trump can pull right now that's going to reverse things. He can shut the Jones Act down. He can unsanction Russian oil, unsanction Iranian oil, but there's no lever that's going to stop this from being, $6-7 prices at the pump. And that's just going to bite terribly for Republicans and Trump in the fall.
Yep, it is. There is just the lack of optionality he has in this moment is what really strikes me. There's just no good outcome for him right now in any of this maneuvering he's doing that will directly lower gas prices in the U.S. These prices, for all the bleating about energy independence and that America uses its own domestic production for oil and gas, it's largely true.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because these companies are like, we're a global enterprise. We're going to raise prices given the global market, and we're going to take advantage of it. And I don't know if you know this, Andrew, but the capitalism that drives the major oil companies is of a particularly virulent nature, and it's called "fuck you, capitalism." We can make the money. We're going to make the money, and they're not here doing like, my God, it would be terrible for the economy if gas prices went up too high. No. They're going to get theirs, and they're going to get theirs now.
Right.
So,
and this is all the knock-on effects of the war. And I think there's two other elements I think people need to think about when they're looking at this polling. Look at where it is now, and think about, say we seize Karg Island. Say we put American troops on the ground in Karg Island, and there's a slow attrition from being that close to Iran. They can use different kind of weapons. Our troops are much more exposed. What's the option? You either retreat from Karg Island, which would be seen as a defeat, or you try to secure,
even more
in Iran.
Here's my Andrew. I think you just hit the thing. Here's my theory of the case. Okay, we take Karg Island, and for days and weeks we are going to be under absolutely terrible fiber optic small drones carrying a grenade-sized thing. It takes a little lump about the size of your fist of explosives to blow up and kill a man. And so they'll fire 10, 20, 30,000 of these little fuckers across Karg Island, which is easily in range for these fiber optic systems. And then the military is going to come back and go, okay, we have to secure a beachhead to push this back. So we protect our forces on Karg Island.
Mm-hmm.
And it just starts to
spiral
and
out of control.
The victory disease ratchet of one more deployment and we're going to make it is not a good one. Yeah, well, the market's certainly looking forward to tonight's festivities.
No, they're scared. I mean, they're really scared, I think. The markets have been resilient for all of this. They've bounced back. They've, plugged their ears when really bad things are happening. But that just won't last very long. And it's not currently holding up.
I mean, we're going into a correction now, would you say?
Yeah, I would say
I think we'd say we're in it or going into it.
We're in a correction. Sure. Now, could it ebb and flow? I think certainly.
Yeah.
But
call it a noisy correction, I guess.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
And they point to the Dow as their big winner moment. Oh, the Dow's at 50,000. It's not been at 50,000 for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, and when Trump loses the base of support, not only among MAGA, but within Wall Street, that becomes a much more serious crisis.
This is a sign that Wall Street has finally said, okay, we're not going to play the game of letting Trump fool us by saying he's going to back off a little and you go back and forth. They're now, and we were way overdue for a sell-off anyway.
Yeah, we were. We're far past due. Yeah. But, the pressure to the Trump administration is coming from all sides. The markets, the price of oil, our allies, his own base, polling, all of this is just going to converge on him. It's already converging on him. And you can tell he's just erratic over all this.
And folks, every week we tell you it couldn't get worse, and it got worse again. Let's bring up the approvals. I mean,
you have those? Whew. Yeah, 36% approval for Trump from the Reuters Ipsos poll. He's at new lows with foreign policy, the economy, and the cost of living.
41 points underwater on an issue, people. Bin Laden would have better numbers on the economy. I mean, it's 41% underwater on cost of living. Definitionally means that this is an issue that is cut into not only Democrats and independents, but deep into the Republican base.
And you'll notice one of the talking points that they're bringing up a lot right now is it's tax season, if you didn't know. And people are getting their returns back, and some people are getting sizable returns. But that doesn't seem to be offsetting the crisis in the polling.
Right.
My guess, and we talked about this a while ago, is that when people get these returns, they're going to pocket them because they don't have any other choice. They can't go and spend this money frivolously. So they gotta hold on to it.
Yeah, and people are nervous right now, and rightly so.
And this is the graph from the Reuters Ipsos poll. You can see there's a major spike in disapproval.
Gee, I wonder what happened at that big dip in approval and that big spike in disapproval. Would it be a war of choice and a land war in Asia?
Yeah, it's just there's no good options. Like Trump has to back off if he wants to save his skin.
Yep.
But he can't. He's not capable of backing off because they've said they've already won. All this bravado. We've already won. We've bombed the shit out of them. We've destroyed.
They want me to become the supreme leader.
He's going to control the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, it's just madness. And it every time they say we've won, we've bombed the shit out of them, they're done. They have no navy, no missiles, blah blah blah. The fact that the war goes on when they say they've won just keeps cracking at the foundation of everything they're saying, and all the bravado in the world. It's not going to save. It's not going to save them. And they can wriggle out, they can try, but
Andrew, as you and I have talked about a lot, the centerpiece, the main pillar of Donald Trump's support, the core of MAGA. If there's a white hot core of MAGA, it's non-college men.
Right.
And even among non-college men and among men overall, he has taken a global beatdown.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of these guys, I would say a good portion of these non-college men are sort of the America First crowd.
Oh, yeah.
And they see this as a wasteful, stupid, just a complete waste of money and time and lives, for that matter. And he promised not to do this. He promised he wouldn't do it. He swore up and down, and these people believe that. Now, say what you will.
Andrew, don't you think that a part of it is these non-college white men in particular, that demographically there's a good chance a lot of them served during the 2003 to 2021 window,
right?
And that
or
demographically,
demographically
now their kids are serving,
right?
Like higher likelihood than average that their kids are serving. So I just find, I mean, Trump has always had a really good sense of like keeping the core of the base together, and I think he's lost it.
I think he has. I mean, Trump has been, he's been in decline for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think the mania of this whole thing, he has set up his presidency in a way, and I'm stealing a phrase here, in a way that, it's the narcissist dream where everybody comes to you and says, You're so right all the time, sir. Here's what we should do. You can do this to save your polling numbers, to distract from Epstein, all this stuff. And he has lost touch with the real world in such a significant way that even if he wanted to bring these people back in, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to do it because people are telling him. Pete Hegseth is telling him, we're winning. We're destroying Iran. We've set the whole country on fire. We've already won. And that's just madness, just plain madness.
I'm going to say it till I'm dead. They cannot beat us in the air. They cannot beat us on the water. We cannot beat them on a ground war in Iran. These guys are the masters of the IED. They are in a mountainous country. Folks, there are two graveyards of empires, Persia and Afghanistan. And they are neighbors. There's a reason. This will not go like we think it's going to go. They will, and there's no, the irony is now a free Iran, which was, by the way, let's remember the very first night Trump goes out in his funeral hat and he says, rise up, people of Iran, take your government back. Well, that will never happen now.
No,
that's over. That's never going to happen. Iran is going to be a prison for its people for 100 freaking years.
Yeah.
Trump.
Because of Trump. This is, I've said this before, it's the most consequential thing he's done. It's the most consequential mistake of his political career. But we have not reached the, that slow stream of flag draped coffins that are going to destroy this administration.
Yep.
That will be Trump's legacy. He will never escape it till his dying day. I mean, the history books are going to say Trump got us into a war with Iran that we couldn't get out of. And that's it. It's not going to be the triumphal arc. It's not going to be the Trump Kennedy Center. That's his legacy. Nope. It will be a slow but steady trickle of flag draped coffins that come home when he tries this ground invasion. It is
so awful.
Such a bad idea. Such a bad idea.
I got to tell you, I will tell a slight tale out of school right now. And a lot of our audience are not going to be fans of George W. Bush, and okay. And a lot of our audience are fans of Barack Obama, and okay. George W. Bush put us into that theater in Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11. We can all debate all those things. But I'll tell you something that George W. Bush and Barack Obama had in common. And I may tear up on this because this is very emotional for me. Without a fanfare, without a press pool, a lot of late nights, a lot of weekend nights, George Bush and Laura Bush would go out to Walter Reed and visit with these badly injured troops. And Barack Obama and Michelle Obama carried forward the same tradition. That motherfucker will never do that. I promise you, Donald Trump will never make himself go out there and comfort a burned or wounded or dying soldier.
He has nothing but
never do it.
People. He had nothing but disdain, and that's his.
He hates them. He thinks they're poor, and he hates them. He thinks they're dirty, and he hates them.
And putting 10,000 troops on the ground. I mean, what is this going to cost? Not just in terms of a cash amount. I mean, what are we giving away here with putting all these troops on the ground? It's just
we're telling the world that China's a better ally. We're telling the world that we're going to do something dangerous, foolhardy, stupid, and reckless, and then we're going to back out when it turns wrong. This is the human toll of this is going to be extraordinary. And by the way, folks, we're not hearing about the human toll right now. They're not reporting casualties right now. And as I said on the other show last night on the breakdown, in the first Gulf War, more young American men and women were killed in the dangerous operations of the military than in actual combat. Being on an aircraft carrier is dangerous as shit.
Not safe.
Working on an air base is dangerous. Working with military vehicles is dangerous. Young men and women die all the time of car accidents.
Yeah.
Look, listen. The biggest single day casualty during the Gulf War was that a boat collapsed in the Haifa harbor, and we lost 19 sailors that day. It wasn't in combat. It was just that things are dangerous.
Right.
And we're not hearing anything. They're not saying boo. They haven't reported a death or a casualty or an injury in 2 weeks now.
Yeah, I think it's
that's because they're covering it up.
And another thing I think we should get to, and I don't think we have a slide for this today, but the war is coming home in a major way. There was a drone attack on
at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana.
In Louisiana.
Yep.
And we're reassuring ourselves that the West Texas field and West Texas light is going to be sort of our saving grace.
Yep.
What if there's a drone attack at an oil refinery in the U.S.?
Sure.
I mean, that would be that is.
And by the way, folks, it takes 25 years to build a refinery. 25 years to build an oil refinery. They're the most complicated mechanical systems and hydraulic systems and pneumatic systems and chemical systems that you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it takes over 5 years to just do the hookups for the tankers. I mean, it's not. This is not a simple process. That
you don't just get to turn a switch and go up, new refinery.
No, we're already in for a penny, in for a pound for an economic crisis.
Yeah, the other day I was going out to Texas and I literally flew over the Valero refinery, at Port Arthur for about. It felt like I was flying over it for about 10 minutes. It's gigantic. It's the size of Manhattan, right?
Right.
Miles and miles of pipes, miles and miles of cracking, miles and miles of refinery systems, miles and miles of tankage, and one or 200 cheapy drones could knock that thing out for forever.
Right.
We're not prepared for this at home. There is no Iron Dome for our infrastructure.
Think about who's in charge of making sure this doesn't happen. I mean,
that dipshit 22-year-old, kid that they put into the Department of Homeland Security counterterrorism.
They have just a clown show who's dealing with Homeland Security, and they're 100% focused on deportations and immigration. But the reality is, there's a much more serious threat, and if that threat manifests in the United States, I mean, we're looking at bad polling numbers now, 29% approval. Trump's going to be down in the tens if there's a serious attack on the United States. And this is not like 9/11, where it appeared to most Americans to be unprovoked. This is very clearly a result of Trump's actions in the Gulf. That will be the end of any semblance of good polling for Donald Trump. That'll be the end of his base. The Republican Party that's the closeout of
Trumpism. I think if he gets into if he even gets into the low 20s or the mid 20s rather, it's a Watergate 94 2010 wipeout. So speaking of that, let's look at a group that Trump lost bigly since 2024.
So Hispanics were an important part of Donald Trump's coalition in 2024. He didn't have, I think he was at 59% approval in January, but now he's down to 28%, 72% disapprove. He squandered any chance the Republican Party had to keep the Hispanic coalition, the Hispanic subset of the coalition in the room. This is a similar story to what you see with a lot of other demographics. He breaks off pieces of the coalition by doing one thing after the next. These people might be motivated by ICE. They might be motivated by cost of living increases. It could be just the price of gas at the pump.
I think, and we're going to have Mike Madrid on the show soon. We're going to invite Mike Madrid on the show to talk about this. He's the expert on Hispanic polling. And I mean, Mike was always saying, like, the immigration stuff is important to them, but the economy is too.
Right.
And we'll dive more into this in the future, but it's like a triple whammy, right? Immigration, economics, and
one thing I want to say is what this doesn't mean is that Democrats have Hispanics in the bag. They need to be serious about voter persuasion with Hispanics. They're gettable. That's what we're seeing. It's a jump ball where Democrats could start talking to these people and pull them back into a blue coalition.
Economics, folks.
Economics, cost of living. It's really just
don't just make it about ICE. The ICE thing solves itself.
Right. Yeah.
If you acknowledge the ICE problem and then you make it about economics, I think that's a way to stop any future drifting for a little while from Hispanic voters.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you know, what happened in 2024 was what happened with a ton of other demographics. Hispanics were getting the Trump economic message that he was going to lower the cost of living on day one. Now, obviously, don't make that promise because it's not realistic. But if there's one party that has, a better chance of moving on affordability, it's the Democrats. It's a winning issue. I would just hammer it all day long. Trump is throwing away money in the Gulf. We want to spend it here and spend it on you. I think it's just, it's no brainer, really.
No brainer. It is absolutely a ABC, sequence of arguments.
Yeah. And I want to talk about special elections, and I want to talk about something that I've been thinking.
Tell me.
The polling looks really bad for Trump. It looks bad for Republicans. Democrats have a consistent lead across polls in the generic ballot, which is when, remember, the survey asks, are you going to vote for Democrats or Republicans in November? They don't tell you any names. So I think, that's pretty evident. Democrats have a lead. I think Democrats have a lead in voter enthusiasm. But I think the polls are consistently underestimating how well Democrats are going to perform when you see flips like we saw in Florida just the other night in Trump's district. It's a Trump plus 11 district that went to a Democrat. Now, this is not expected. This is outside the conventional logic of elections, and it's outside the polling that we would normally see for Democrats in deep red districts. I really think there's a vast underestimation of how well Democrats are going to perform based on what we're seeing in the generic ballot. So I think the most important metric here is voter enthusiasm.
I think you're pretty bullish on that.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
There's a big gap right now between Republicans and Democrats on voter enthusiasm, and it's not a tough equation, right? Like when one party has a significant lead in voter enthusiasm, they win by huge margins. Look at 2018. There was a big gap in enthusiasm. Democrats picked up 40 seats. So when the two parties have similar voter enthusiasm, they sort of cancel each other out. The party in power suffers a little bit, but not so much. That's not the situation we have right now. What we're seeing right now is that Republicans are not showing up. We saw it in Texas. We're seeing these flips all over the country in deep red districts. And I think it has a lot to do with Republicans staying home. And I think that's what we can expect in November. You see the polls and Republicans are with him. They approve by large margins what he's doing right now.
Right.
But I think that doesn't necessarily reflect how they feel about every single issue. So when you break out Republicans, there'll be some who say they approve of the Iran stuff. There'll be some who say they approve of the ICE stuff. There'll be a decent margin that'll say that inflation is getting really scary. There'll be a decent margin that'll say the cost of living has gone up significantly for me, or the price at the pump. So there's little things for every one of these groups that's peeling them off, and it doesn't mean they're going to flip over to Democrats. What it means is they're not enthusiastic about voting because this is their issue. They're not going to go to the polls. They're not going to feel good about going to the polls for Republicans because they see them as sort of complicit in what's happening to their lives. And I voter enthusiasm, I think, will tell the story less than what we're seeing in the generic ballots, even though Democrats have even
though the generic ballot is a
solid lead,
is a whaler right now.
So this is among independent voters. We can expect massive flips with independent voters.
I want to say something about the independent voters based on the two Florida races. So House 87 is Mar-a-Lago, a big part of the island, just over the river into Palm Beach proper. It's pretty affluent. It's pretty Republican. But I think in some weird ways, Senate District 14 in Tampa is a much more fascinating indicator of this stuff, because first off, Nathan essentially got mathematically about a little more than 3/4 of the independent vote went Democratic. even when you add up that large independent surge for him and a decent Democratic turnout, he still ended up inferentially getting about 18% of the Republican vote, which should scare the hell out of Republicans, because Tampa, and this is, this area, it's from Lutz, where your grandparents live, all the way down to South Tampa, which has lately been trending very red, very Republican. This was a district that looks a lot more like a lot of other districts in the country. Mm-hmm. It's got an urban and an exurban area. It's got a big suburban component. And generically, it looks a lot more like a lot of these swing districts that are out there on the congressional side. And it's also, by the way, the size of a congressional district almost.
Yeah.
And for people who don't understand how the Republican Party of Florida works, every single lobbying group was required to donate maximally to her campaign. Every lobbyist had to max out to her campaign. The state poured millions and millions, state Republicans poured millions and millions of dollars into this campaign. This guy, Nathan, spent like $200,000 and they spent like $2 million.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And there's a lot of talk about the war chest for Republicans. And don't get me wrong, Republicans have a lot of money to spend.
Metric fuck ton of money.
They will spend it because they're desperate. And you can see that in a lot of these congressmen just dropping off. I think we're nearing the 40s in Republican congressmen saying they're not going to run for re-election.
Right. Well, another one today, Sam Graves.
Yeah.
Let's bring up that District 14 map real quick.
Let's see. Do we have that?
I think Sam has that. I think Sean has that. Sam. What am I Sam? Oh, you don't. Okay.
Okay. No worries.
Hello.
But it sort of loops around the side of Tampa without. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Here we go.
So guys, if you draw this map, if you look at this map, that northern tier, Lutz, Lake Magdalene, and there's anything above the line, above that where it says Egypt Lake, anything above that line is Trump-tastic.
Right.
It is MAGA, heavy duty MAGA. Below that line is more squishy.
Right.
And the bottom right-hand corner is kind of Democratic. This thing completely blows away that Trumpiness of this district. Yeah. And it is, and I can tell you for a fact, I've talked to a couple of lobbyists in the last 48 hours about this. They are flipped the hell out. They're like, we spent what? We didn't get what? And the crushing criticism coming at them from the White House on down is in both of these seats is a big scare for these Republicans. It is really.
I mean, one has to wonder what their internals say, but the public polling is, it's obviously bad, but I think the election results demonstrate that it's worse than what we see in the public polling. Because if you can spend all that money, you can spend millions and millions and millions on every single House race, and your diminishing returns really start to bite at a certain point.
Right.
I think there's a severe underestimation in how well Democrats are going to do. But that does come down to a few factors, whether or not we can, whether or not Trump maintains this war and what the consequences of it are going to be. And
where the economy breaks.
Yeah.
Is
it's breaking.
And one of the things Trump loves to say, big, strong men come up to me, tears in their eyes. They say, Mr. Trump, my wife loves me more than ever because my 401k is so good. It's so good. Guys, if the market corrects, that one pillar that Trump really relies on, that one storytelling narrative item, the economy's great. You can ignore my insanity. The economy is great. Doesn't hold up when the economy isn't great. Whitney has reported to me that Nathan was actually spent 7-1. So
7-1. That's
real money.
Yeah, and if you look at, I don't know the numbers exactly, but Republicans have a lead in cash nationally, but they're not. It's not 7-1. It's not a 7-1 lead in cash. So they're going to dump a lot of money.
Well, hello, special correspondent Wednesday Wilson.
Do you have anything to say about Trump's polling? No.
Anything?
No,
she does not.
She doesn't like the president, and she would have voted against him if she could.
I believe this to be the case. I believe this to be the case. Look at you. Look at you. Hello, young lady.
Oh, teeth are bothering us today. It's a tough
Oh,
day.
I bet. It's that time.
Yeah,
She's
it
in the
is.
teething phase.
Oh, goodness.
Well, you know what, folks? This seems like a good time to wrap this thing up today because we got a little bit of Wednesday action here. And there she goes. And there she goes. Well, keep your eyes open tonight, folks. We'll see if he tacos or a tacos.
Ooh, scary stuff.
Scary stuff. Not great, not bueno. I am headed down to the beautiful city of Tampa, Florida to see your grandparents.
Nice.
So here we go. Yeah.
Well, I'll text you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, folks. Talk to you soon.